Welcome to Fostering Blooms, the podcast where we dig deep into gardening and all the ways it can enrich your home and life.
Together, we'll explore every aspect of gardening the organic way, keeping it simple, accessible, and fun.
Whether you're a seasoned gardener or just getting your hands in the dirt, we're here to share the tips and insights you need to grow something truly special. I'm Shannon Foster Boleen.
And I'm Caitlin Blum, and we're two friends on a mission to cultivate beauty, creativity, and connection through everything we grow.
This is Fostering Blooms. Garden ready July.
July. Hot, hot, hot.
Hot, hot, hot. Dog days of summer. I just learned why it's called the dog days of summer.
Why? Because we're hot as dogs? Or what? We're
what,
hot dogs outside.
Really, no, I always thought it was like dogs wanting to lay in the shade and it was just really hot. No, seriously. I mean, that's how I feel, but it's because the dog star Sirius is rising from, I think, July 3rd until like August 10th or 11th is what I read.
Oh.
This is from Farmer's Almanac, which I love. Farmer's Almanac. I read it every morning. They have a great little newsletter. It's just cute. They have a lot of astrology and other stuff.
That's how they used to plan and figure out. They'd read the stars and what's going on.
It's really cool.
Wow.
I guess it's astronomy and also astrology.
Yeah.
Anyways, dog days of summer. Here we are.
We're sweating. We have really sweaty balls.
Yes, very. We started off with that at our very first episode, talking about sweaty palms.
That's right. I'm sorry.
But now,
sweaty palms.
Yeah. We have sweaty palms.
Sorry.
Oh. Hey, we already talked about melon bras. I think people are used to it by now.
Victoria's Secret, they reached back out to us.
Did
they?
They
are going to be making a melon bralette for our melons.
Good. That's good. I'm so glad to hear that because mine aren't going to need it soon, I hope.
They're busting.
They're busting out. All right. Well, oh gosh, there is still a lot to do in July.
Yeah. We got through the hustle and bustle of the planting in May and June. Like planting our bums off.
Yes.
Now it's slowed down, but just a little bit. And thank God probably because of how hot it is.
Honestly, August I think is my worst, but by mid-July it really starts getting tough. And I really can't work outside unless it's early morning or evening. I just don't take it as well. But yeah, there's a lot of good stuff to do.
What are we going to do? We are going to be pulling a lot of spring crops out. So things are coming to an end. Mm-hmm. So our lettuce, kale, spinach, brassicas. Like, I just pulled a bunch of this shit out now and it's June.
Yep.
It should be pulled out by July.
So we're recording, just so listeners know, we have to record our stuff a couple weeks before the new month begins.
Inside secret.
Inside tips.
It's June.
Yeah.
But we're doing this for July. Yeah. So like I'm trying to think what we'll be doing in July.
Yeah.
I'll probably still be pulling stuff out because I leave it way, way too long. I'll tell you that much. Really, because if I don't have something to put in there immediately, I'll just leave it there. Like it's helping weed suppression and stuff. But if there's some bolted stuff, it's time to...
Well, here's an exception for me. I pulled a bunch of arugula June 14th, but I'm leaving one plant so that I can save seeds. So I've left one plant in there. I've got carrots in there. I'm not ready to put the next thing in there yet. So that's totally fine. I've pulled out all my lettuces already because they all started bolting. I just pulled out some brassicas because they just weren't performing that well. And then I left a few in. I've got cabbage in still and some collards. But I left in some of that blue Russian kale because it's still it's like waist high and it's still doing really well.
I love that stuff. The red Russian, I had that one plant from October. I just pulled it out in June. And I kept cutting back the bolting, the flowers, and it kept doing new little leaves. It was great. That is just...
such a great variety.
Yes.
And my spinach, the darker variety, the Dark Night one, that's still going fine. But the other one bolted, which was the lighter, softer variety. I pulled that one out. I'm keeping the dark one and I'm keeping one variety of kale. And part of the reason I did it is because that bed is where I'm also going to put more chili peppers. I've planted some in, but I need the space. I've got like 6 of them sitting there starting to flower, which they should have been in the ground a month ago. But I've just been holding them to put in that bed. So I really want to get them in there. And I am glad on one hand they're going in late because then I'll have a good later harvest of those Calabrian chilies. I also pulled out my snap peas. I planted them very early. I think I harvested 12 to 15 pounds of snap peas, which is a lot of snap peas.
It's amazing.
About a month ago, on one of the arches, I started planting beans called Monte Gusto, and they've already grown about 8 inches. So the green beans were coming up while the snap peas were still getting harvested.
That's great.
Yeah, so I just pulled out the snap peas on one of the arches like a week ago, and then I waited and then pulled out another set. I'm drying a lot of the pods that had just come up so we can have seed for next year.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then that other arch I need to plant with a climbing Romano green bean and a Christmas lima bean. Awesome. So yeah, I think that there's something to be said with snap peas. Like you can let them linger, but truthfully, I might have gotten a little more out of them, but they're more of a cold weather kind of plant, and they're just not going to love heat.
Yeah.
The one bean that I missed that I really wanted to grow this year, but I just didn't get it in, and it likes cold weather, is a garbanzo bean.
Oh, yeah. When should you have started that?
I should have started that like in March or April.
Okay. You just didn't have the trellising space.
It doesn't need to be trellised. It's actually a bush style bean.
Okay.
I just didn't really, and truthfully, it was more about the bed they were going to go into. I probably could have thrown them in, but I just didn't have the time. Had too many other things going, and it was, out of all the things that needed to get done, it was the least of the priorities. So sometimes you just miss it and you just try next year. I haven't researched to see if I could do a fall crop, but I don't think so.
Yeah, interesting.
We've got a beagle in here today with us, and he is a little restless, a little shaky, a little snorty. Bless his heart.
He's in the dog days of summer.
He really is. Anyways, that is pulling spring crops and prepping those beds for what's going to go in for summer. If you've made a plan previously, a crop rotation plan, then you probably already know what you're going to do. But I would say a lot of people probably don't always do that, and that's okay.
I'm not that far.
Yeah.
I had great spring plans, which is great, but then like what's going after spring, I did like early summer, so where my tomatoes and cucumbers and everything. But now that I've pulled out some of my other bolted stuff, I've been looking up what should I plant after this?
Yeah.
Because I'm not like running out of stuff. I'm really ahead of it, but I want to maximize all my bed space because I don't have my plan. I'm just kind of ad hocing it, but I'm making sure that I'm doing appropriate things after what I've just pulled.
Right. So the mob families don't get into a war.
Yeah, I don't want that.
Yeah, I don't want it either. And, I think honestly, Caitlin, I think that's how most of us are. And for me, I usually am pretty good about having a crop rotation plan because in the past I had more limited space. And so I really had to know. And now I have a lot more space, but it's also new space. I'm trying to figure out, okay, well, what do I really want to put there? For me, this is the first time I'm ever going to do a cover crop. I decided I'm going to do buckwheat, and I'm going to just do it in one bed. I'm going to just start with one bed and see how that goes. My biggest fear with cover crops is that I'm going to get tired, lazy, too hot, be gone, whatever, and miss it, and it's going to flower and seed and create a disaster. So I feel like, okay, well, I know this cover crop's going to go in early July, and then I'll be able to get it out by the end of the month or early August. I'm not going to be gone somewhere where I can't do that.
Okay.
And it's just one bed, one 4x10 bed, and I will do that. So I'm excited to see how it goes.
And it's 4 weeks of growing, and then you crush it down.
Okay. Yeah, it's basically the buckwheat is about a 30 to 35 day window. You want to
quick.
Yeah, really quick. And I chose buckwheat. I mean, there's a lot of there's like clover and other things, but that just felt like the best fit for me once I researched it. I feel like you can go and check that out if you want, but if you have a small space, you really may not have an option for a cover crop, and that's fine. On my other beds, really this is a time about replenishing, right? So what's your plan after you pull out stuff that you're going to do?
Yeah. So what I did is some of the stuff that I already pulled out, and I'll do the same thing in July when I'm pulling out the last of the bolting spring veggies, is amending with compost. Amending with compost and some more mulch and some light 5 light fertilizer. I'm really scared of fertilizing too much because I've been using bone meal to fertilize my stuff, specifically my dahlias, and something came in and dug them all up. All of them. They dug up everything that had bone meal underneath it. Everything.
I mean, it's hard to even respond because it's like, it just makes me teary. Like,
but it's okay. I'll just never fertilize again. No, I'm just kidding. That's maybe a topic for another episode. There are other fertilizing solutions out there other than bone meal. Oh, you are tearing up.
I really am. It's so upsetting. She put in like 70 dahlia plants and all these other things. I'm like, oh my God. But I know how you feel. I mean, it wasn't as extreme, but when I did the spring garden, I used the bone meal and the blood meal with the plants that really need it. After I did that, something was coming in and really going after the ones that I had done bone meal with, particularly more so than the blood meal. And I would come out this one bed and it was like right in the corner of the raised bed. I mean, the plants would just be laying on the ground. And I'm like, what's happening? And I realized it was the same thing. And I definitely lost some seedlings that way. So it does, it sucks.
I think we're going to have to come up with an alternative for next year because I can't go through that again.
No,
I cannot go through that traumatic turmoil.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm done harping on it.
I'll say that I think that off the top of my head, that a lot of people who are vegan, they have other fertilizers that they will use. So I think we just switch to something that would be similar in the ratios to bone meal. Alfalfa meal comes to mind, but I don't know that that's right.
I'm not going to say it right. It's mycorrhizal fungi is something I was reading was a really good alternative.
Oh,
so I think trying that next year instead of the bone meal. I don't know what I'm going to do with all the bone meal.
Well, we'll figure that out. We'll end up
I'll
using
just save it.
rose holes.
Rose holes because it's deep enough.
So deep, because dahlias, you're not planting that deep.
No, I know.
The next thing on our list to talk about was fertilizer.
Yeah,
and I think that's just a good segue because July is a time where if you're going to do some side dressing of fertilizer, that's a good time to do it. So tomatoes could use that, eggplants and peppers. Like I said before, I plant my tomatoes, I plant my chili peppers. I don't do a lot of fertilizer in the beginning, just way, way, way deep down at the bottom of the hole, and then just compost and a little bit of a cow manure. Let them settle in, get growing strong, and then around July is when I'll do a granular fertilizer, and then the rest of the season I just do like liquid feed. This is a good time to do that, and there are some other plants that might, and flowers included, want some liquid feed. With my roses, I've gotten to the point where I don't continually fertilize those. I feel like if you're going to do fertilizing, I think the gentler fertilizers like fish emulsion and seaweed feels better to me. It feels a little less like they've got enough stress.
Yeah.
So trying to really put on the growth isn't necessarily the time.
How are you going to fertilize? Like, are you going to be using a 5-5-5 and are you going to sprinkle it around the base? I am not a big fertilizer. I give this stuff at the beginning and I'm like, whatever. But this year I want to maximize my yields.
Yeah, I'm not a huge person with fertilizer either. I think I'll do what I said with my tomatoes and my peppers. And then with cucumbers, I don't really do any fertilizing with them except for maybe a fish emulsion water, especially if it's been dry. If it's been raining a lot, it kind of gets lost in the mix, so to speak. But I don't do anything with cucumbers other than that. With cucumbers, it's more about trying to keep the powdery mildew and the cucumber beetle away, So
you can see my eyes, they're rolling high to the sky.
Yeah. What I will do is when we're planting in new stuff, I'll do a fertilizer to prep that. For example, potatoes. We're going to talk about potatoes and garlic next. So can I go ahead into that?
No, I want to continue to talk about fertilizer.
Okay. I'll just make up some stuff then. No.
It is.
Yeah. Okay. So with potatoes, I planted potatoes and so did you in the spring. And we are going to do a whole episode on potatoes. They're one of my favorite things to eat. I love them. I haven't grown them for years and years and years. So I'm still learning some of the tricks of the trade with potatoes. But I do follow the Wood Prairie Farm where I get my potato seed from. I follow their directions like a little Bible. And one of the things that I absolutely do is fertilize those because they are heavy feeders. Mm-hmm. And so I bought their special fertilizer mix because I just don't want to have to rethink it or figure it out or try to make my own. And it goes a long way. This little bag goes quite a long way. And so with the potatoes, I'm harvesting now my earlies, which are the potatoes that are ready in like 90 to 100 days. And then I've got some mid-earlies, and I don't have any lates this year. Like russets are typically later,
A little bit
like
bigger,
take longer to
That makes
grow.
sense.
So I've harvested my first half. Probably could have waited even a little longer, but honestly, they were within the window of being ready. Leaves were kind of yellowing and starting to look a little rough. I left about half the harvest, getting those beds ready, and then I'm going to plant the potato seed I just ordered, which is Corolla and Elba, into a new bed. That fertilizer will be, I think it's about 6 inches down with about 2 inches of soil on top of that, and then the potato that's been chitted, because you want them to be deep in the south because it's so hot. So the potatoes I will fertilize. I'll probably do a second round of brassicas, probably cabbage again, cauliflower, and then like collards and kale. But I definitely will fertilize with blood meal. And everything else that's already out there will just get, like I said, that one last thing, and then maybe a little touch here and there. So with some of the new ones, I'll give it a little bit of a head start, those heavy feeder crops.
That makes sense. And my cauliflower is doing great. They're about the size of a softball now. The Romanesca, all I got were leaves.
Me too.
Why?
Don't know.
Get into this a little bit
So
more.
my Romanesco were up to my
They're huge.
hip in height, if not bigger.
They're huge.
Massive. Now, I looked at them and I thought, I could be pulling you too early, but they've been in the ground for like 100 days.
How long are they supposed to?
And then I thought, well, maybe it's because I netted you to keep you away from cabbage moths. Did you net yours?
No.
Yeah. And my cabbage grows no problem with being netted. It doesn't need to be pollinated or whatever. I finally made the decision yesterday, actually, to just go ahead and pull them up. I was growing Romanesca as a little bit of an experiment. And so that experiment didn't work the way I wanted to. Maybe I should have left it in longer, but I can't. I need the space.
Here's what we'll do. I'll leave mine.
Okay.
And we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
It's shorter, but it's just leaves. But maybe that's the beginning of, I don't know. We'll leave mine.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens, because I don't have anything ready to go in that bed yet.
Well, I did pull out one cauliflower plant. I got a head of cauliflower that was the size of a
Volleyball.
That's right. It was a volleyball size. And that was 3 weeks ago that was ready. And I've already made it, and it was perfect. It was beautiful.
Wow.
And the other one hasn't produced anything. Then I realized one of my other plants in there, collard green, got slipped in with it. So now I have collards that are to my waist.
Where is the cauliflower head on this? Okay.
It's a collard, Grid.
It's a collard.
That's right. I was like, you look a lot like collards. And I did grow a couple collards, and then they just got mixed up. And I'm like, okay, just like my eggplant. I'm like, I think I found where my eggplant is.
Kate, do you think this is an eggplant or a pepper plant? I think it's the eggplant.
Yeah.
I knew I did one from seed. Where are you?
I know. I didn't have that many. I'm going to buy more eggplants. I read something that basically we still have time theoretically to grow eggplant, which I can't even
seed right now?
I can't even believe it's true, but I'm going to try. I mean, why not? I'm going to buy eggplant seed for next year anyways. I might as well throw a couple in, see if I can get them to germinate and throw them in. I mean, last year we didn't have a frost till December.
I was going to say, this is a really good time to talk about the change of our growing seasons and maybe even what zone we're in. But nonetheless, I think we have a month more of growing?
I think so. I mean, there's a risk to say that. I mean, we're 7B. Technically, our last frost is usually around October 15th, roughly. I can tell you, it has not been the last 2 years. The year before, it was early November. Last year, it was the beginning of December. So I'm hedging my bets, and I'm saying, well, you could still technically plant tomatoes right now for a second harvest. I mean, I can't even imagine I'm going to have enough as it is.
We're going to be drowning.
But it's for the people out there that want to have 300 pounds of tomatoes, this you could still do. So if you can still do tomatoes, theoretically, you could still do peppers and eggplant. I need to get some serrano pepper seeds because those didn't work for me this year, and some eggplant. I'm going to just see what I can make happen. But going back to potatoes, you can definitely plant another fall crop of potatoes. I ordered my seed in June. It should come in here in another week or so. I'll chit it. It'll be ready to go out in July. And July is kind of the month in 7B to put out your next round of potatoes.
Would you chip mine for me too?
I will chit your potatoes. So we've got potatoes and then garlic.
Garlic.
So,
It's been good this year. Well, it's interesting. It's so interesting how different gardens are. So we planted our garlic
the same time.
November? Or was it late October?
Late October.
Late October. We had a couple different varieties of garlic. It was an Irish garlic and a Spanish garlic. That's all I planted. And they are massive. They're like, what's this?
Yeah.
Softball?
Huge.
And they're hard neck. Both of them are hard necks.
Yeah.
We could go on and on about garlic. We have a whole separate episode for that.
The garlic seed that I saved, which was like red chestnut and music, and there was another variety. Basically, music is the only one that kind of grew to almost full size. Everything else was like a miniature clove. I have never had that happen with garlic. I don't know why it happened. I've done some research, which we talk about in the garlic episode. It was like it was every other row that did okay. Not quite, but it was like this row didn't do anything. This row was okay. This one was huge. This one was nothing. This one was huge. It was so bizarre.
That's wild.
It's the worst garlic harvest I've ever had. I don't really know why. But the point is that it is the time to start harvesting garlic in 7B in usually either June or July. Some of that'll vary based on your hardneck or softneck varieties.
Yeah. And when you planted it, when I planted my garlic, I did them short ways in the beds. I have 4 foot by 16-foot beds. They're long, and I did them short ways. On either side, I had kale, cabbage, and Swiss chard. I had different greens on either side and spaced them out in different places with greens in between them. I don't know if soil-wise that maybe helped.
No, I think it's good.
I don't know, but my shallots also did really well.
Yeah.
Which all the shallots Shannon gave me.
Yeah, and my shallots did great. I really didn't do any kind of fertilizing for the garlic. I did put compost on top, but I think that bed in itself might have been a little more tired than I realized. Yeah. But either way, garlic usually is pretty much a fail-proof crop, and it's a really good one for new gardeners to start. I'll probably put a little more diligence into when I plant them this fall. I'll probably do a little better job with the fertilizer from the get-go and make sure that that bed's been properly enriched. I'm gonna follow my onions with the garlic. So the onions are still going right now. I won't harvest those probably until July, late July. So they're doing really well, and I'm very pleased with how they did this year. All the water certainly has been helpful. I'll give that bed a really good once over, really add some compost leaves and mulch, and then I'll get the garlic in there in the fall. I might do a cover crop in that one after I pull it.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Keep us abreast.
I will. Okay, so if you're not already tired by July, let's see.
There's still a lot of stuff to do.
There still is.
We're also going to be doing shade cloths on our stuff, which I've never done before, but you're a shade cloth connoisseur. We're going to be using a lot of drip irrigation.
First year for you for drip irrigation.
It is.
Are you so excited?
I am. So it's so funny. I was like, yes, it's June. But I said to Sierra, yes, more rain, more rain. I don't have to water. She's like, isn't that why we put the drip irrigation system in? I said, that comes into play in July and August. Don't you worry. She'll be working herself. But let's capitalize on the rain now. We've been really lucky. So time to make sure, hopefully you already have it in place. If you are utilizing it, it's really easy. We're going to do an episode on drip irrigation. We might have missed the boat. But you know what? You've never missed the boat. I mean, you can put it in any time.
Honestly, again, some of these beds that I made were new. So I put in the irrigation that worked for what I planted at that time. I probably will need to add a few lines to some of these newer beds. But this leads me to another thing that, well, let me finish shade cloth and then we'll talk about beans.
Yes.
because that's important. The shade cloth, I used it for the first time last year, and it does really help. You can either buy it online. It's kind of like a black woven-y looking material. But I've also read that you can use the Protect Net, which is basically what you use to protect brassicas from cabbage moths.
That's what I'm visualizing. You could reuse
But you
that.
can use that. Yeah, you could use that, or you could use the black, and you can either put it up onto posts and you drape it over, or you can do the hoops and you could drape it over that way. So the crops that really benefit from that would be lettuces.
Yeah.
Because as weird as it is, July is when we need to be planting out some lettuces too. Johnny's just did a really good webinar about heat resistant lettuce varieties.
That's great.
So I'm going to get some of that seed. This bed that I have where I did the tulips in the summer, it gets morning sun, shade afternoon. So I'm going to put the lettuces in there. But your potatoes need a little bit of shade. Your cucumbers could use some.
Yeah.
Even raspberries do okay with a little bit. They can't take too much rough summer sun.
A little singy.
Yeah, I would say any of those plants, and your fall seedlings of like brassicas.
That makes total sense to me.
And sometimes maybe even beans, so they don't have wilt, like flower drops. So maybe your bush beans. I don't know how you would shade cloth trellis high growing beans. So I would say maybe your bush varieties, but I guess we'll find out since I have a lot of beans.
You do have a lot of beans. Speaking of beans, what's got to happen with those in July?
Well, the first thing I would want our listener to know is that you can still plant beans in July. So the cool things about beans, you can get them going as early as May 1st when the soil's like just warm enough. But I planted my beans in June, and let me just tell you that if I hadn't publicly declared that I was going to plant 120 feet of beans,
You're such a bean bitch.
oh my God. I'm like, have you ever given up a bad habit or gone on a diet, and the way that you keep yourself by doing it is to tell people you're going to do it? Because then you're like,
well, shit, I've got to plant all these beans now.
I mean, only one person out there might be like, I wonder what happened with those beans. But in my mind, it's like, I've said it to the world. I've got to do it. So, I really, really naively was like, oh, I'll get them in May. May's so far away because I'm so far ahead this year. And May 1st came and went in a blink of an eye. So I started getting them in the beginning of June. And I was able to use the auger to do it. I won't go into everything because I do want to do a separate bean episode, but the auger did help me to get that much in. You don't have to be that aggressive, but here are the varieties that I'm growing. Here are the varieties that you still could plant if you're in zone 7B or warmer. I'm growing shelling beans, which would be your black bean, your kidney bean, cannellini beans, Santa Maria Pinquinto, which is like a pinto bean that is from Rancho Gordo. Also from Rancho Gordo is a yellow-eyed bean. It's really beautiful. Rio Zape, which is kind of like almost like a purple kidney bean, sort of.
Yeah.
And then Christmas lima beans. Roma green bean that I want to put in, like those Allen's canned green beans. I love those. And I was like, I want to grow those. So I'm getting a bush variety and a vining variety. They'll be going in late June, early July. In the ground already is Monte Gusto, which is kind of a yellowish type green bean that...
Like a wax green bean?
Yeah, I think so. Sarah Raven loves it. And so I was just like, okay, I'm going to plant it. And then the Borlotti beans.
God, I've done so many.
And I'll have a regular string green bean.
All right, you're done.
So
you've done enough beans.
I've got a lot of beans, and I will be honest with you, I am really, really worried about aphids and like bean problems.
You're gonna be out there in the midsummer heat.
Right.
I was gonna say a fogger, but we're not using foggers. Like, stay away from my beans.
I'm probably gonna be next podcast episode like drastically importing whatever insects control those pests. But the thing about, I've never grown that many beans. I find like usually year one pests don't show up like they do year 2 and 3, right? Because they don't know. They don't know that all the goodness is there. They don't know yet.
They go find you. They go get your beans.
Gonna find me.
Your beans ain't safe. Hide your beans.
Hide your beans. Oh, I mean, I gotta tell you, those shelling beans are all bush style. which is awesome because you don't have to have tons and tons of trellises for someone growing at home. That bush style is great and less work. So if you're just venturing into the world of beans, I think bush beans are amazing for that reason. I have never grown this amount of beans before. I've never grown this variety of beans before. There's no way I could possibly consume this amount of beans, although they will last, if cured properly, for 3 years. But yes, people are going to get beans for Christmas.
I think it's great. I think it's awesome.
I do too. Well, I feel like it's a fun experiment. And here's the truth. The 6 varieties that I put in the 120 feet. So it's one variety gets 20 feet each, right? I didn't make the soil super amazing.
And it's probably a good thing you planted that much I don't know, I think they're going to do really well.
Well, they each got about 2 inches of compost. And other than that, I mean, I drilled down and there's clay. So we'll see.
I think we're going to be spending all of our spare time shelling beans. We're going to be recording the podcast shelling beans.
Well, what the plan is that you can stomp on them. You can put them on a thing and you stomp on them.
Okay, and they just kind of scatter out.
And they come out. So we're going to be having stomping parties.
Okay.
We're going to play rent up here.
I'm ready.
I'm ready too. Theoretically, one plant produces 1 pound of beans. So if you are going to grow bush beans, for example, and you're like, well, I want to grow 10 pounds of bush beans, then you'd want to have probably 10 to 20 plants. And the reason I say 10 to 20 is because it might only grow half a pound. It might get eaten by something. So you just hedge your bets a little bit and plant a little extra.
You might get found.
You might get found.
So I just did bush green beans.
Yeah.
So I did a couple, and I did do some succession planting on them.
Yay!
I might even do some more in July too, because I have the space. So I might I'm going to do some more. I did some nice, I think a blue lake.
Yeah, those are great. Did I give you those?
You did.
Yeah,
and I had a few different kind of bush style green beans. And I'm hoping to freeze a lot of those.
Yeah, for sure. Well, one thing I looked at is they have a little device where you can French the green beans. So it slices them like French
perfectly.
Green beans. It's kind of a hand crank. It almost looks like how you spun the old pencil sharpeners in school. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that you even want to do a ton of them that way, but you could mix it up. And then
fancy.
I got to get my pressure canner so that we can can some of them too.
Yeah. And we'll be doing a whole episode on preserving and canning.
Yes.
Come July and August, when we're really in the height of processing.
For sure.
10,000 pounds of beans.
Yeah. My kitchen
Okay, those are all dried.
Pretty much my water bath canner is just on the counter for the entire, from July until the end of October.
Yeah.
I asked Beth once if it annoys her, and she's like, no, I love it. It feels like it's home.
Oh, precious.
I know. It's so sweet. I enjoy the process because it's kind of meditative, and honestly, I'm not going to be out in the garden in the heat anyways. I don't know. It kind of works.
Absolutely. It's a good switch up of time.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens with all the beans. We'll definitely keep you posted. I did end up succession planting a lot of that 120 feet because the first 60 feet I did at one pass, and then I did the other one. I did get the drip irrigation down.
Good.
And I did get the Hortonova netting up in place already. The main thing I think I'll have to watch for is pest, and if I do need to use shade cloth out there, which I just don't know that that's going to happen. I just don't know. That's a lot to deal with.
That's a huge space. And I think it's probably a good thing that you did succession plan. For these beans, some of them will have different, growth ranges, but if you planted them all in one swath and 80% of them need to be harvested at one time, that's a lot. So it's probably good there's a little bit of a staggered just for the amount of time for harvesting.
Yeah, I did that with the cannellinis, and I still have to plant some of the green beans we mentioned and the lima beans. Really, throughout the whole property, they are staggered, and that big 120 feet is actually behind the rose bed, cutting bed, with this land that was unused. So it's fixing the soil with nitrogen. When I eventually get in there what I want to get in there, it's going to be really healthy. And that is a good reason for you to do more of your beans, because if you have extra space in your garden and you don't really know what to do, they're low impact. They usually don't have to have super rich soil. They put nitrogen back into the soil. So there's a lot of families that it's good to follow them with.
Absolutely.
And if you're trellising them, they're usually good to grow next to a lot of other things. I mean, there's some things that they're not, but for the most part, they're pretty generous in terms of what you can grow near them.
I ran out of trellis room because they're covered with tomatoes.
Well, we need to get you more trellises.
I know, I need to do some more trellises. But I am going to be utilizing the back patch of my wildflower field, which I didn't get it all planted. And so I'm going to be doing pumpkins and borage and gem corn. I hope I said it right.
Yeah, I think
the gem, it's just the gem, it's the multicolored gem corn. So like a little fall patch.
That's going to be amazing.
I'm really excited. Once my seeds get here, I think I'm going to start them in containers first, start them, make sure they get, instead of doing direct sow, just to make sure everybody gets a good start. So I bet those will probably be going in beginning of July. So except for the corn, I'm sorry, I will be direct sowing that.
Yeah, and that'll go in ASAP.
Yep.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I know this podcast is coming out in July, but I'm sowing some corn as well.
Right.
I chose a very short growing 80-day variety, and you really have to get it in June. It's the very latest. And when Kate was telling me about her fall patch, it was kind of a toss up between melons and pumpkins. And I'm like, ooh, pumpkins.
I know. I did the Cinderella pumpkins.
Yes.
So 100 to 120 day growth, but I mean, I'm really counting on our extended grow season.
Yeah.
So that'll be ready in October, November, as well as the corn. If we get to harvest some, I think it would be cool to use the stalks.
Oh, for sure.
As decorative stuff. But if we get to eat some, awesome. And it's it's a smaller little variety. You can use it for popcorn, you can boil it, you can freeze it, or decorative.
Neat.
So it really looks cool and a very multi-purpose. I've tried to be strategic in what I chose to put out there.
Your corn is way cooler than my corn. My corn is like yellow corn to eat. So we'll have that corn. We'll have a little corn swap. Exactly. Yeah. That's why we have a community.
That's right. That's why we're not doing all of the same stuff, because we have each other to rely on.
Yeah. And I have that other pumpkin I want to give you. I think it's called, I'm going to get this wrong, but I think it's like Musqué de Provence or something beautiful in French, but it's green. That looks kind of like the Cinderella.
Yes.
And I did get a few of those last year, and they were really lovely. So, and
can you cook with those?
I mean, probably.
Okay.
I have one variety that is a cooking one that I specifically got for cooking.
So we'll look at those, because the Cinderellas you can, and I wanted to pick something that looked cute.
Of course.
I wanted a pretty pumpkin, but also was really good for roasting and cooking and stuff.
Well, I got a small one that's like for pies, essentially.
Okay, I'll start that now then.
Yeah. Like if you're looking at melons, like cantaloupes, I planted my cantaloupes already, but you could still plant cantaloupe in July. You could still plant watermelon in July. You could still do acorn squash, honey nut squash. Any of those squashes you could go ahead and still plant in July. Sometimes when you delay planting on some of those things, you miss sometimes the big bust of bugs that attack that thing. So sometimes it's a benefit. It's a benefit to start. Yeah. And if you are planting at that time when a lot of those critters are coming out, like Caitlin is doing, just start it inside and let it grow just a little bit, even though it's easy to grow direct with the squash family. I usually do a couple in ground, a couple inside, and that way I've got backup. And then you can even put a little bit of protective netting over it, or even a little cage. But either way, the protective netting will protect it from animals, but it'll also protect it from the bugs until it gets too big. Just a little tip.
I think that's what I'm going to do too. I'm going to do them in rows so that I can use some of your cloth and cover them till they get big enough. And then the borage I'm just going to do throughout. I
love borage. I haven't used it before, but I got a couple packets of seeds, and I am going to be planting it in a variety of places around here. So I'm really excited. I'm a little concerned that it's late in the season, but I'm like, I don't care. I'm going to do it anyways.
I'm doing it too. We've got a longer growing season. You're taking full advantage of this.
Yes. Oh, and one thing with corn, if you've never grown it before, say you can only grow 10 plants. Don't grow it in just a row. You have to grow it in like a block, because it won't pollinate if you grow it in a row, because the pollen has to go from tassel to tassel. So if you grow it like 3 by 3 by 3 in a little grid, then it'll get pollinated properly and you'll get corn. But if you grew it in a row and there was no other row of corn around it to pollinate it, you'll end up with a problem.
Can I just hand pollinate it?
I mean, you can. There's people like My wife grew up in Nebraska, and that's what they did. They went out and they were basically making sure that all the corn got hand pollinated.
How often do you have to do it?
Let's ask Beth.
Okay,
because
well,
I've never hand pollinated corn before.
Because I'm thinking about doing it in a row. What's interesting about all of this stuff that I'm planting there is in front of it is a massive field of wildflowers. So all the pollinators that are there are
they're gonna love it.
I think it'll be really interesting to see how well everything does with that massive amount of flowers there for it.
I mean, I just can't imagine having a vegetable garden without flowers in it.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about having marigolds or basil or a couple things that flower. I mean, I'm talking flowers. I have really purposely, and you two have planted flowers everywhere around that vegetable garden. And that's the reason I call mine a potager. It's the French word for a kitchen garden, but it's very much the fact that there's both flowers, herbs, and vegetables in there.
Yeah.
And I think every vegetable garden should have some element of that. And I will tell you, next year, I'm going to start working kale into my flower beds.
Yeah,
because
I
literally, my kale is a shrub. It's so big, it is like a shrub. And the texture of the dinosaur kale is just so unique. And I've planted vegetables. I've done chili peppers, small tomatoes, and everything within my flower beds before. Not the first person to ever do this. But I think that I haven't done it quite as much here because of what I'm developing. And now I'm starting to be like, okay, this is where I want to put that kale, in this bed, in this area. And not just for the purpose of eating it, but for the purpose of the structure of what it provides and the color. The blue Russian kale, it's got the purples and the reds and this light gray. And it's just, I don't know. I think that's another episode too, is interplanting. But the more that you can get plants that are pollinating at different times of year together to support other plants, I think there's a benefit. With the exception of fennel is one that doesn't play well with others. You got to kind of keep her away from everybody else.
She's in the herb garden.
Yeah, she's on her own over here too. She's with the flowers. Okay, well, we're going to wrap this up because we've been going long.
I mean, this is the middle of summer.
Yeah, it's going to be longer.
There's a lot to talk about.
We'll be shorter in January. I'm glad you said that, because the one thing I was thinking about yesterday as well is that we're talking about sowing seeds in July for vegetables, but I definitely want to mention flowers. When I was looking at my plan for flowers sowing, there's a lot of sowing in July, believe it or not. There's nothing in August. There's stuff in September and a little bit in October, but then it's like you don't really sow anything of substance between November and December. We're getting to the end of the sowing season in a lot of ways, because even in September's pretty heavy. And then October's very, very little, and a lot of it's outside direct sowing. We're kind of at the end of a lot of having to do that. So just hold on, because I know it gets tough. But I think where a lot of people give up is they think, oh, well, we just plant for spring and summer harvest. And they're not thinking about fall. And all that stuff you love in the spring, or most of it, you can still do again.
Absolutely.
Right?
You have the opportunity to. Right. So like, keep at it. We're going to have an episode on burnout in the garden, because this is it's
real.
Yeah. So
it is real. So really quickly, some flowers. I have a little tradition. July 4th, I always sow my foxglove seeds. I do them in a big tray, and then I get tons and tons to plant in the fall. It's really fun. Delphinium is something you can sow. Scabiosa, Orlea. Snapdragons is a great fall crop to sow, and I absolutely love them. Beckia is another one. Also, yarrow and Canterbury bells. And then coming up shortly after that will be your echinaceas. There's a couple echinaceas that really need cold stratification. For the flower growers out there, fall is also a really big time. So
yeah, I'm ready. We need to get some more seeds, because I'm ready. I still have snapdragons in 72 cell trays.
That's hilarious. Well, just keep them in there and then plant them for fall and see what happens. No, I don't think you can hold them that long. I'm just kidding. But maybe, I don't know, maybe you will.
Maybe I just will.
Maybe you just will. Well, I will just throw this out there. Johnny's has the best selection of snapdragons that I found anywhere.
We'll go seed shopping. Fine. We get so excited about picking out new seeds.
Yeah. Expert seed tip. Just because you have a seed packet doesn't mean that you have much seed in there. So check every one of them.
Yeah. Because if you're a hoarder like me, you'll go back and be like, okay, I'm ready to sow this. What? There's none in here?
Yeah. Or, oh, there's only half a pack in here, and I planned a garden design around, I don't know, having 1,000 poppy seeds thrown down, and I have like 200.
It's okay.
Anyways.
July's busy. It's good. It's good. But you also get a little bit of a breather.
Yeah. When?
Maybe. I don't know. I was just trying to encourage people. Gird your loins, baby. July's here.
Here's your breather. Work in the garden in the morning or late at night, and then don't do anything during the day when it's hot.
Yeah. Avoid the dog days of summer as much as you can.
That's right. Well, let's go get dirty.
All right. Let's go grow, baby.
Thanks for listening to Fostering Blooms. If this episode inspired you, send it to a friend who's ready to ditch bland grocery store radishes and get spicy in the garden with us. We'd love it if you left us a 5-star review. That helps other people like you find our podcast. And don't forget to tag us on Instagram when your blooms show off. Until next time, let's go grow, baby.